Okay. With that, I'd like to call the regular Board of Finance meeting for Monday, September 21st, 2020 to order. First item on the agenda is public forum. I see a Brady Bunch style screen right now with exactly 9 of us, and I don't believe I see anyone in public forum. So with that being said, Bob, just so you know, on my screen, you're Alice. So
Really?
you're right in the center.
Oh, that's Linda for me.
Everyone's got a different Alice, I'm sure. Item number 2, approve minutes of our regular meeting minutes of August 17th, 2020. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, corrections? I had a couple of, basically they're typos. I'm not sure if anyone else saw them, but under items number, hold on, let me make sure I get them right. 6.1, 6.2, and item 10, Mr. Trotta was indicated as opposed on those motions, and those motions he is indicated as in favor, but he should not be indicated as opposed. There were a couple of previous ones that he was, but so again, 6.1, 6.2, and 10. Actually, it's not really item number 10. It was the close of the meeting. It was the adjournment. I'm sure he was in favor of that, as we all were.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else on the minutes? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstain? I think we're all there, right? Okay.
Mm.
Very good. Going to item number, agenda item number 3, correspondence standing building committee minutes. We have 2 from August 11th and August 20th. There were a couple of things I was going to raise. On August 11th, under item number 15, there was a discussion for possible action update on school facilities needs assessment. If you read that statement, it indicates that Sightlines did a good presentation on their preliminary report at the Special Standing Building Committee meeting on July 21st. I know that there were some gaps in the timing on that, and I don't believe this Standing Building Committee minutes from July 21st were sent to us. Again, I think it was just a timing issue that we missed it.
We got minutes from September 8th.
Do we have minutes from September 8th?
Yeah, a special meeting that they had. I'm staring at them right now. Wait a minute now.
I was reading August 20th as well.
Yeah, and September 8th. A regular on September 8th.
We don't have them posted.
I don't have those.
I don't have them
Were they
either.
sent separately?
No, it's in my packet.
Well, that could be why.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what we have on our agenda, right? We have the August 11th and August 20th. What I did do is I forwarded, as some of you probably already know, I forwarded the July 21st presentation that Sightlines did to provided for the Standing Building Committee. I don't expect us to necessarily go through those. What I can tell you, just as a recap real quick, if you haven't had a chance to read them, it appears that it was about an hour 15 minute meeting. They indicated, again, there's a lot of detail. I'm just summarizing. There were identified 10-year capital needs for the district totaling about $32 million. They were broken down into 1 to 3, 4 to 7, and 8 to 10 years. It was indicated that the funding scenario ultimately averaged an investment of $3.2 million per year over the 10 years, Generally, the district has about 2.6 million available. Mr. Gurnham had agreed that October would be a good time to bring this report forward. And I believe that was because the Board of Education already had a lot going on. So this facility needs assessment would be better received later after schools opened. And I believe that was agreed upon by Mr. Sands. And they're looking at grouping some of these projects together to create a number of larger projects for efficiency's sake. That is a really down and dirty short briefing of what that says. There's a lot of detail in this. I know that they intend to present to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance and the Board of Education. But again, that has not been scheduled. But I wanted to let you know that July 21st, there was a preliminary report to the Standing Building Committee. So you all have that now, even though it's not on the correspondence. And then just reading August 11th meeting minutes, I didn't have anything else. And I think 8:20 was regarding 2 projects that had change orders that needed to be discussed and approved to keep the projects moving. With that, are there any other questions or comments regarding the Standing Building Committee minutes that we do have?
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 comments. On the meeting of August 11, item 3.
Yep.
The issue is raised about performance contracting by Johnson Controls specifically. And in the minutes, an issue has arisen, I'm quoting, with Johnson Controls with completion of performance contracting work on time. The committee wanted to have a better understanding of the leverage available to hold a contractor to the time frame agreed upon in a contract. That seems to be a substantial issue.
Yep.
No sense, it's not in the minutes as to what monies are involved, but it is a big issue that I would suggest we get some further input on from the SBC.
I'll go in a couple of different directions with that. Number one, I read all of that. Here's my synopsis of that conversation that happened that I was not privy to. I wasn't there, of course, but the way I read it. Every so often, every couple of years, there's some turnover on the Standing Building Committee. And there's always a question, and you all know my history with that building committee, being both on it and being a liaison to it. Every once in a while, there are questions regarding holding contractors accountable for schedules and trying to either put in some sort of, I wouldn't say penalty clause, but the way they indicated in here, holding them, having leverage to hold them to a time frame. Usually whenever that happens, I've mentioned this on the Board of Finance before at meetings, whenever you put in something that says there's a penalty, you should, or liquidated damages, there was also comment here about incentive. And if you have one, you should have the other. And in municipal contracts, that can be very difficult to do. I don't necessarily know the details of it. That's why Mr. D'Onofrio was there as the town attorney. But I think there's been quite a bit of turnover on this building committee. And I think they're asking a very reasonable and regular question, which is how can we hold the contractors more accountable for their performance? The second thing I will say is that this usually is not an issue on all of the projects. And I think Linda and Cliff and others on the Board of Ed side could probably vouch for this, is that most of the projects do not have issues with timing. They usually are meet their deadlines, sometimes ahead, maybe sometimes a little bit behind. The particular contract here is the performance contract, which is a large contract, as you probably read, and put itself onto, I guess, a different level with this building committee, understanding that there are issues with getting this completed in a timely fashion, and there were issues, and being new to the process and being new on the committee. So I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword here on what they're trying to figure out. The third thing, and this came up right before the meeting with Bob and myself, is that you'll see on a lot of the agendas it says Board of Finance liaison report. that was, it appears on some agendas and some it does not. And sometimes you'll see it on the meeting minutes. They'll say no Board of Finance liaison report or whatever. You'll see that periodically. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off. I think while we're meeting on Zoom, it's even more important that it shouldn't be too much for a member of the building committee to join us to answer some of these questions. I luckily, in some ways, because of my background, I can usually, try to navigate some of these questions and comments that come up. But I don't want to do that because it's speculation. I'm only going based on professional knowledge. So I think the reasoning for this and why the building committee wants to look at incentives and liquidated damages and contracts, I think it would be better for somebody from the building committee to respond to that. I don't think it would take that much for them to join, at least in the early part of the meeting, and respond to it. You may recall we were trying to do that earlier on in this year, and unfortunately COVID hit, and then we really didn't follow up, and that's partly of my doing, that I didn't really follow up and we kind of let it slide. I think questions, you see the agenda of 18, 17 items every month, and there's going to be questions. So I'm going to reach out to the chair of the building committee again, and I'm going to ask him about some sort of communications or liaison with our board based on our previous requests that we wanted to do and kind of fell short. And again, I think a lot of that has to do probably on my end, not following up. So that's a long-winded answer to, I think, a couple of things, but mostly that the performance contracting really did set off a bit of a discussion regarding the contracts and performance.
Oh, also, you have mentioned that that there's turnover in the standing building committee, and there are the two DeMayo brothers in that. And it probably would help if we had an identification as to who raised the point, so that we would know they were a relatively
Quick question.
new.
Why is your name Martha? Martha Gamerman?
Nigger, 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 nigger.
Oh, boy.
Got that, Tracy? It's all right.
What's that?
We're all back. So
Moving on.
that happens every once in a while. Hey, we finally got our first Zoom bomb. So
Yeah, I debated whether or not to let them in, but
it's okay.
They're out though.
But you know what? It's a public meeting. You have to let them in and give them a shot. But I do see that there's other people trying to join.
Yeah,
And,
Laura Hartman keeps threatening to join, and I keep asking her not to. It's true. She thinks we're interesting.
Yeah. Give us a second here. There's another person who wants to join too. Tracy, you see that?
Do you want me to let them in?
Does anybody recognize the name?
No. But
No, I don't. But we can very easily
I'll let them in.
let him in.
That Kyle's iPhone was the same person who made derogatory comments.
Oh, he's off now.
Okay.
I realize that too. So, all right. So we had a little bit of a break.
Never a dull moment.
No.
Well, you said it was an easy, well, not easy, but short agenda. So now,
Yeah. And
some
now-
excitement in the middle.
See, no, I jinxed it. Now it's got longer. I just love to see these people actually do it in person. That's why they don't do this in person. All right, we're back. So, Mr. Gamerman, where were we?
Since we have two DeMeo brothers on the board,
Yes, we do. Father, son, I believe.
would be useful if there is, if the reason that this was raised is what you suspect was that the member is a new member and isn't aware of the history of this particular issue.
Mhm.
It might be useful if the person relaying this would leave his name and the name be included in the minutes.
Yeah, well, I'll have a conversation with David and let him know that we wanted to have some sort of representation. I think there was some concern about on one of the meetings, again, not to belabor this issue on standing building, but I think there was some concern on one of the meetings at I think it was one of the Davids attended, and I think grilled him a little bit on things that were going on, and we're asking him to be, I guess, predict a little bit more in the future what was going on, as opposed to respond to questions. And that got back to the building committee, that they wanted to be, or should be, reactive, not proactive in making responses. You may recall that from some of the meeting minutes that we had and some of the discussions. So I think as long as we keep it to, could you answer questions that have that we need responses for from minutes that we already have, and not predict what's going to happen at the next couple of meetings. I think that will go over much better, rather than have a liaison or a representative from the building committee trying to represent the entire committee. I think they can answer what's happened, not what's going to happen. So.
On the August 11th meeting minutes for standing building, on page 4, item 5B, I mean, it's a good example why having somebody from standing building on the call would be helpful, because it's not very clear. There's an issue with the boiler piping at Baldwin. And so my question was going to be, has it begun and are we on target?
Right.
You know, and has the work begun? And then item number 11, again, another issue at Baldwin. And we know Baldwin was one of the schools that we could not, as a board, give the go-ahead, or no, I'm sorry, I was thinking of Lakes. It was Baldwin we gave the go-ahead because the needs up there are significant. Heating and air conditioning.
Well, if you go on the town website, look at the later minutes, which are only transcripts, Zoom transcripts, so you've got to read 40 pages. It won't make you feel any better, Veronica.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
It's astounding, the lack of communication and the lack of understanding about what needs to be done.
What item was this specifically? I know you mentioned item number
5B, the boilers, the boiler piping.
What was the other one?
And then the item 11 on, it goes under the general category of phase 2 upgrades at Baldwin Middle School.
Right.
And you know, I mean, to Bob's point, it's a bigger issue. One of the things that I'm concerned about is, you know, there was a lot of talk about saving money, and we could do this work because the piping was going to go in through under the ceiling. They wouldn't have to cut through the roof and so forth. And now we're finding out that the equipment doesn't fit. So, you know, I mean, it begs a bigger question and a bigger conversation is how is it that they don't know that this equipment doesn't fit? I mean, I'm sure that the specifications, the weight, the same thing at Melissa Jones, that issue, the specification on the units. I mean, I guess my question is I don't know how in depth they went.
That's why.
How far they questioned the engineering firm. And
right.
why
And
that's why,
yeah, no, I agree. And that's why the design consultant on any of these projects should ultimately respond to what happened during that. And if it was something that was missed, they need to say that. If it was something that was a unique condition, they need to say that. It needs to be clearly understood what the reasoning was. The biggest concern is when this happens and it is not budgeted. You know, every project's got contingencies because no set of drawings
right.
or design is perfect. So you have contingencies to make sure that if something does come up unforeseen, that you take care of it. But what is the reasoning for it? That needs to be understood. And unfortunately, on both of those, I don't believe the consultants were at either of those two meetings. So, but they were asked to be at the September one, which evidently I think Mr. Gamerman has the meeting minutes of that we don't have. Possibly. So we'll get those next month.
Also, apropos of that, if you wanted to, I didn't want to jump in on Veronica, but if you're through at that point, I see the same issue in the August 20th minutes. Item 1, there's a change order in there for Baldwin HVAC of $90,000. That's a substantial change.
Yeah.
And the issue was discovered during the design process. And I think Mr. Sands had raised the question as to why that wasn't included in the design process. It seemed like a fairly basic element. So that's another case of
Yes,
same thing, right, Veronica? Yeah.
yes.
It goes for both projects. So.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to, you know, the concern that we all have, especially now with COVID and stuff. Heating and air conditioning in our facilities is really important. I mean, we don't have the luxury of time.
Right, and I would be confident that the performance of these are not going to, there's not going to be a compromise in the performance of them. It's the timing, because the units and the equipment either don't fit or weren't the right spec or whatever ends up, you know, being the case. But I'm sure that will be something that will not affect the performance eventually. It just has to get done correctly before that happens. So.
Mike, I just wanted to add that Cliff was at this morning's Board of Selectmen's meeting with the HVAC amendments to the contract. So they're moving forward.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right, anything else on building committee?
Well, I hope we could talk about the report on the 8th of September. I hope we can just put that on to next month's agenda.
Well, I think let's just make sure we get September's and hopefully October's.
Yeah, I'll
We'll have both of them.
mention that one because
It's all a timing issue with the building committee minutes coming through to us and getting to Tracy.
right. Because we're talking there about the potential $2 million commitment on the turf fields.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Is that okay? That's the September 8th.
Yeah, that's it. That's item 6 of the September 8th.
Well, again, there were going to be several reports that were going to be shared during the September meeting, but since we don't all have them. We'll have to wait until next month. Okay. Anything else on standing building? I did notice we had somebody in the waiting room, but I wasn't sure either. I wanted to wait until there was a gap, but they have disappeared. So I guess they didn't get in to do anything. Item number 2, pension committee minutes. So on this particular issue, on these particular minutes, I know that there was some commentary here about the 5.7 lump sum calculation study. It's pretty extensive. And I did read at the end that Robert Hartman thanked the pension committee for addressing the issue. He would bring it to the Board of Finance for their information. I'm sure there's maybe a couple of other items here, but Bob, is there anything that you wanted to recap regarding that calculation study during that meeting? You're on mute.
I'll try and be brief, and I'm sure Linda can fill in all the gaps. If you remember, although I don't think it was in our minutes, in our June meeting, I mentioned to the Board of Finance, I was concerned about lump sum withdrawals by members, the non-certified employees of the Board of Ed. This is something that used to bother me when I was on pension. I'd bring it up and everybody would tell me that it was not a problem. So I went to the June meeting of pension and asked two things. One, are we telling the pension members what a defined benefit pension is for all those who are taking it out to put it into a 401k? And two, aren't we concerned about the number of people who are taking lump sums in this low interest rate environment? You know, that indicates risk. I mean, it's just common sense. I don't have the numbers, but it bugged me. So Linda did a lot of heavy lifting and got a hold of Milliman, who did a heck of a study, Milliman. And they said, yeah, it is true that using our return assumptions that we're falling behind whenever anybody takes a lump sum. And they gave a number of examples, and one of which was if a 55-year-old woman took a pension distribution of $215,000 lump sum, the pension fund would lose $115,000. So Mr. Sands is going to be looking into this. He was going to report in September. That's now been put back to November because obviously there are big items coming up. So some recalibration has to be made, and you know, we kind of, you know, good thing we kind of brought it up sooner than, well, by now. Linda, anything else?
Well, since then, there has been some discussion as to whether or not changing the calculation formula would require the contracts to be renegotiated or to be negotiated into the contract. So we're looking into that a little bit more, as well as, well, it would take us a few years to try and negotiate the lump sum option out of contracts, because it's 4 contracts, 3 of which expire next June and 1 goes the following year.
This,
Go ahead.
gee, I can't remember how many unions or how many contracts the town has, but this is pretty much the minority. Is it, you know, everybody else has given this up?
The town's pretty much given it up. There's some people that are grandfathered in the town. For the Board of Ed, it is still an option in their contracts.
Yeah, but police and fire and just about everybody else are no longer in that boat.
Yeah. We still have, I think it's almost 90 people that are active in those plans.
Yeah, I guess, and
does affect.
And one of the things that came out was the number of people who are eligible to take a lump sum distribution. It's half. It's half of the people in that contract. It's not just a few.
Right.
So we don't, you know, we want to show everybody that we're being proactive, and as Mary Jane will explain, you know, this is their own bucket. There's no contamination to other areas in the pension fund. So anyway, it's been identified, and I think it's good that it's being looked after.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes, go ahead. Katie.
I just wanted to add, you know, we are aware of this, and the request by Mr. Sands to give us a month or two was indeed because of the massive effort to reopen schools, as Mr. Hartman suggested. But I just wanted to underscore that. Certainly, we're going to take this issue seriously. We just needed to get schools reopened and put our focus 100% on that. But can now add this to a list of things that we will be looking at.
Okay. Thank you. Bob, thank you for the report also, and looking into this more. And I'm sure that over the next couple months, once the Board of Education can maybe come up for a little bit of a breather, we'll or report from Mr. Sands. So.
I have to say again that I have to thank Linda and Milliman for putting this into a format that even I could understand. It was a great effort. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on pension? Okay. Item number 4, review and approve report of expenditures for the town government for August 2020. Mary Jane, I'm assuming that we'll go in order and start with revenues.
Well, if you'll allow me the liberty, I had a couple other items I just wanted to report on real quickly first.
Please do.
So first of all, I just wanted to let you know that the auditors are here and will be here for 2 weeks. I don't anticipate any complications with that, and in fact, our report is further along than it has been other years. Thanks to our new contract with Milliman, we've been hearing Milliman a lot. They promised to have our reports turned around in a very expedient fashion, and they have delivered on that. So our pension, which you have heard me in other years, has been the excuse for a delay in our audit reporting. Our pension is actually one of the very first things completed this year. So that is very good news, and another kudo for Milliman and the work that they're doing with the town. So I just wanted to report on that. I also wanted to give a really quick update on FEMA, although I don't have a lot of concrete information to give you as far as reimbursements. I would like to report that we submitted our first reimbursement request for COVID. COVID is a request every quarter. So the first quarter has gone in ending June 30th, $247,000. That does include supplies that were sent to me from Linda for the Board of Ed. So that is an accumulation of the town and the Board of Ed. So we will be putting COVID FEMA reimbursement requests in every quarter. So we'll be looking to do that again in October for the quarter ending September. There, in the review of those, there were quite a few small items that I don't have a crystal ball, but I guarantee FEMA isn't going to approve. But we're hoping to get 75% of as much of the reimbursement as we can. And as I've reported in the past, anything that FEMA disqualifies and also the 25% match will then be requested through the state CARES program. So we have other opportunities to receive that funding. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that we were working on that. And we've also have had 2 major storms here in Guilford. The tropical storm, we have already put in preliminary estimates for the tropical storm and the storm we had on 8/27, which is our little portion of whatever tornado might have come through. Both of those have gone in as preliminary numbers in the hopes that our county will meet the threshold for FEMA funding. For the tropical storm, we had approximately $225,000 worth of expenditures, and for the storm on August 27th, $40,000. So we're hoping that those will be approved for FEMA funding as well, so that we can receive at least 75% back. So I just wanted to give you a little quick update of where we stand, and just so that you know that we are out there seeking all the funding we can as we move forward. Any questions on that?
Yeah, just real quick, on both of those, what I know, well, actually you're talking about the other being smaller items, but on the 225 and the 40,000, what was that mostly? Was it tree removal? Was it what composed most of that, or a good portion of it?
Yes, we hired a contractor to work with our Public Works department to remove trees from the road. So there's a contract for that. It includes the grinding that will be done at the stump dump, which hasn't been done yet, but we have a contract and estimates for that. It includes overtime and vehicle usage. So that's pretty much all that, and it also includes through natural resources, some of their tree removal. So anything that we've been able to identify specifically for that storm has gone in.
Okay. Great. Anything else anybody else have any questions? Okay. Now revenues, or
Sure.
whatever your pleasure is, wherever you want to go with this.
We'll start with revenues.
Okay.
I'm sure the first thing you'll all look at is the taxes. Tax revenues are down about 10%, which is reflective of our overall revenue as of the end of August. Taxes are due by October 1st. So hopefully September and through October 1st, we will make up for that. Although we are down 10%, we're actually pleased with that number. It has allowed us to have a good cash flow. We had anticipated or expected more to be down more because of the deferral. So as you know, we had some mitigation items that we were ready to put in place in case of that, but we did not have to do any of those. Our cash flow has been fine. So we'll be keeping track of where we stand with tax revenues. The tax revenues for September have not all been posted yet, so I was unable to get you a number for that today. On the other hand, interest income is not our friend this time. Our numbers are way down. They're similar to where we ended the last fiscal year. They're starting to creep up very slightly. Unfortunately, they are creeping up much slower than they dropped when we lost our tax revenue, our interest income revenue a few months ago. We have two major investment vessels that we use for our funds. We put as much money as we can into them. They are both currently at 0.1% interest, down from over 2.4% this time last year. So it's very significant. We'll be continuing to watch that and doing the best we can to bring that number up. Other than that, many of our departments are having a slight decrease in revenue from last year. We have a few that are tracking higher. People are still out golfing. Our golf fees are already at 69% brought in. So it's amazing how one item, just like interest income can go from the highest to the lowest, golf has gone from the lowest to the highest. So it's just been a crazy year. And
What
also,
What about the police revenue?
okay, I was saying, police revenue is really from special things that they do, like along Boston Road, all of those types of services. So we did not see a large amount of revenue. The Board of Selectmen asked that same question. I have not had a conversation with the chief yet, but I'm going to do that and see if he knows that number is going to level itself out in the coming months or not. So overall, we're at 42.4 collected 2 months into the fiscal year. And, just like I said, slightly lower than we were last year, but mainly because of tax collection.
Right.
Do you know how we're doing relative to other towns with regard to tax collection? Are we about in the middle, or are we exceeding what other towns are seeing? I know a number of towns in the area did a similar deferral of the taxes, and I was just wondering if they're all about the same rate, or you may not know. I was just wondering if maybe you'd had a conversation with some of your peers.
I don't know. We were actually supposed to have a GFOA board meeting last week and it was canceled, so I probably would have found out then, but I'm afraid I don't have an answer for that.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on revenues? All right, as far as expenditures, you'll see that the departmental expenses seem to be a little bit higher, just slightly higher at this time than we were last year. And that's really because salaries have not been adjusted. We put the money into reserve for personnel for the 2021 salary increases because contracts weren't negotiated by the time we put the budget together. So on your next month's agenda, I'm gonna have those adjustments for you, so that will adjust those percentages. Once the budget comes up, it'll level those percentages out so that the salary lines will be in line with where we are in the fiscal year. Debt principal is over budget, as always is at this time, because we have paid all of our principal, which is bad timing for cash flow. But other than that, you know, we pay all of that at this time. So the amount that it's over budget is the premiums that you've budgeted from fund balance. So that will also be on next month's agenda to bring those premiums from the fund balance to bring this budget back to where it should be. I don't have much else to report on expenses unless you have a question.
I see that there are a couple line items for COVID in, for example, in, where am I looking here? Legal and some of the other areas. Is that something that's going across all the departments, or is it, are you trying to collect it in certain areas and not others?
Do you mean for COVID expenses?
Exactly.
Yeah, any department that has any type of COVID expense, we put that line item in.
Okay.
So that's how we're able to, anything in those line items is what we download, and that's what we have for FEMA, at least for the direct expenses of supplies.
So we may see some of the other departments starting to have that line in their budgets or their expense accounts.
They may. It's kind of really leveled off on the town side. We did a lot of our COVID work, you know, at the end of last year, putting in partitions and that type of protected barriers. So, you know, other than continuing to buy hand sanitizers and masks and things like that, I think our expenses, unlike the school, has really leveled off. So we're not seeing as much as we have. So I would expect ours to be down.
It's more ongoing maintenance and that type of thing rather than infrastructure, so to
Correct.
speak. Mm-hmm.
Correct. It's clean, you know, it's everyday cleaning. The maintenance guys are, you know, cleaning the hallways, you know, every day and that type of thing. So those are the types of expenses we have at this point.
Great, thank you.
I was making some comments before and then I realized I was on mute.
You were on mute, yeah.
Yeah. Car alarm was going off outside. Natural resources and public works were the two I noticed, but public works was mostly encumbrances, which popped it so high or higher from what I could tell. And the natural resources, it seemed like, again, that was tree removal. So they trended a little bit higher, but not anything that I was, you know.
And keep in mind, some of those expenses are part of the trying to collect through FEMA. So once that FEMA declaration is actually provided for us, that we know that we have a reimbursement, we'll be pulling those expenses out. At the moment, they're there because we actually don't have a reimbursement availability at this point. So public works and natural resources, as I said before, had extensive expenditures for the first storm.
Mhm. Bob, go ahead.
Just a quick one. The primaries and elections have become more expensive. Is the state, I can't remember whether the state is going to subsidize some of the additional expenses?
Yeah, if FEMA only gave money like the state Secretary of State's office does, we would be golden. The Secretary of State's office has provided funding to us already. I don't have all the numbers. There was a $3,000 grant for technology, and there was another grant for extra time, and they're sending all the towns money based on I think based on the number of voters or something like that. Gloria handled all of those grant reimbursements, but so we are being reimbursed from the state Secretary of State's office for a lot of the overages.
They've already been busy. There've been teams of people processing thousands already of ballots, applications, and so forth. It's a big undertaking.
It absolutely is. There were 4 additional people in our offices just today, working on it.
Yeah.
Veronica?
How does the FEMA work? Do they let you know if we're going to get reimbursed, so you know ahead of time what we're gonna get, and then we just have to wait until they actually cut the check, or do you not know until they cut the check that we're getting reimbursed?
Right. Well, what happens is when a disaster happens, let's take one of the storms. A disaster happens, it's a couple of days. FEMA says, all right, anything related to that storm that happened from this day to this day, tell us what it is, tell us what you anticipate that expense to be. And then our county has to meet a threshold, and it's different for every storm. So we have to, as a county, we have to meet a threshold. And if we do, then FEMA provides us with that funding. So that's what I had to do for the 2 storms so far. We've told them what our anticipated expenses were. The whole county's getting together, and then we hope that FEMA will say, okay, we have money for, New Haven County. At that point, then we have to apply for the money. We have to, provide invoices, timesheets, lots of documentation to FEMA. FEMA goes through them with a fine-tooth comb. They'll look at every dollar that we provide. They'll ask questions. They'll seek out more information. Ask for contracts, ask for purchase orders, different things to prove on how we did the process. And in the end, they'll say, these are expenses that we approve, and we'll give you 75%, and these are expenses that we don't. And then we have the opportunity to go back and try to change their mind on the ones that they don't. But in my experience, we don't change their mind too often. So the difference with COVID, because COVID is an ongoing disaster, and there is really no start and end time at this point. That's why for the first time, the first time ever, I've been a finance director for 30 years, and this is the first time ever the FEMA has done this on a quarterly basis. So it really shows you the difference that this is, but so that's why we're doing it quarterly for COVID, instead of trying to a year from now put it all together, which we're actually thankful that they're doing it that way.
So once the county is declared, or we cross that threshold as a county, then do the individual towns make the reimbursement requests, or going through the county?
Nope. The reimbursement and request comes directly from Guilford. We have a pool of money, and we can move forward on our own. The only time we're joint is when we have to meet that threshold.
Do we have any kind of any anticipation of what the state will give us in advance of the election?
From the Secretary of State's office for the,
Yeah.
I want to say it's somewhere, I don't know, $5,000 to $7,000. I don't have the numbers with me. I'm not at my desk, so.
Well, I can see just from some of the expenses that we suffered in the primary election, that there was about $5,000 to $7,000 in there that we calculated. But I think for the general election, it'll be a substantially higher number of voters.
Yeah, we just spent, I believe, $7,000 on the ballots alone.
Right.
They're certainly not covering all the costs, but they are at least providing some funding to help the delta between what we would normally spend and what we're having to spend.
So you won't know that number until it happens.
Well, right, but we do have the numbers for the three, I believe it's 3 grants that we're getting from the Secretary of State's office, and I can get you that information tomorrow.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Do you expect there's going to be any savings now that I see where Dennis Johnson has retired? Will we see any savings when we hire a new health director? Or is that similar to a world language or a science teacher at the high school where you don't really see a savings because there's a scarce amount of qualified candidates to fill that position?
Well, I do know that they have filled the position for Dennis's job, and I believe there is a savings. It's not a significant number.
Okay, great.
And the new person will be in the defined contribution plan.
Good.
Of course. Anything else on expenses? Anything on the warrants? Special fund or weekly? I didn't see anything on any of the warrants, actually.
Just a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Out on page 3 on police generators. Is this a new piece of equipment, the generator, or is it a refurbishing or what? $17,500?
Which warrant are you on, Ken?
Page 3.
Special or, well, I know page 3, but on the main warrant?
Warrants of the
Yeah,
warrant.
the main warrant, top of page 3, CNA generator service.
Under
generator.
oh, CNA generator service. What was that?
They had to replace their generator. This is a replacement.
Okay. And you asked before if we had any questions. I'm just curious as to, it was in special funds, the first 2 items for DEP, a total of about $35,000. What was that?
Matt is not here to really talk about that. That was part of our consent order.
Oh, okay. This is all part of the settlement. Okay.
Mary Jane, the Hilltop Securities, their fee, is that just, was that related to the bond refinancing? Was that specific to something, or is that just?
That's just bond refunding, yes.
Okay.
Both, yeah, bond refunding.
Do we have a flat fee? I mean, for general advisory, how are they compensated by us?
We only pay when we go out to, I've only received invoices. When we actually go out to bond, they consider all of those questions related.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
I'll send a bill.
We can move on, I guess, to medical. So was the August, is it fair to say the August claims, I mean, there's the obvious reason that it's August, summer, elective procedures are people are probably catching up, but was that also a catch-up bit from the July claims?
It's definitely a catch-up from July claims, and we may see some catch-up even in September. If you look at the other columns from last year, you'll see that September was when we had the big catch-ups. So we could expect more next month as well.
Okay. Yeah, okay. That's what I figured. And it's too early to be really talking about ISL right now, so.
Yeah, that represents one claim at this point that has reached the $75,000 limit.
Okay. Okay, anything else on medical? Anything else for Mary Jane before we move on? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town for the month of August 2020 in the amount of $11,035,402.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
Thank you.
Appreciate it as always.
Mary Jane,
What was that?
you had all the answers.
Item number 5, review and accept report of expenditures for the Board of Education for August 2020. We have Linda Trudeau and Dr. Balestracci this evening. I understand, Katie, that you're also the reviewer, so
I am.
we'll hand the floor over to you. Before we go on, I know Tracy knows this too. As the co-host, I should bring it to the attention that we've had somebody in the waiting room now for about 20 minutes, and I am very, very hesitant to let them in. We could let them in and see what happens. They've been very patient and waiting there for a while, but as soon as that happens, all bets are off of what happens. So,
is it like a real person or is it like a Zoom bomb?
it doesn't look it. We already got Zoom bomb before you joined.
Oh.
Yeah, you missed it. Yeah, it was lots of fun. It's a name that I don't recognize. It looks like someone just typed in some weird name. Let's just put it that way. So I'm just letting them sit there because I think that's right now, based on what's happened tonight, that's the right thing to do. So I'm just letting you all know for record that there's been somebody in the waiting room, and I don't intend, and I don't think Tracy does either, of letting them in right now. They could always watch this on video and try to join us next month. So.
They send us an email if they have a question.
That's right. If it was a somewhat normal sounding name, I'd say yes, but it's not, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. With that being said, Board of Ed, floor is all yours.
All right, thank you. So for August 2020 financials for the Board of Education, expenditures for the month of August were $3,411,397.06. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of August were 13.42% of the budget, as compared to 14.03% in the prior year. Revenue for August was $3,487.25 from Medicaid. You will notice our various categories here reported. Salaries, the percent of the budget expended approximates the prior year. Employee benefits and transportation are higher. Purchase services, tuition, supply and materials and capitals are lower. You will note on this report prepared by Mrs. Trudeau that a number of these categories have these variances due to the timing of purchases and payments. I think the most important thing here on this report this month is that Mrs. Trudeau and her office has been working really hard to identify expenses that are indeed COVID related, and is starting to report them out separately for us. So there is, in fact, in this report, several COVID-related lines. There is more to add here, and she and her office are working to make sure that that any expenses over the last month or two that need to be reclassified will in fact be reclassified. The last thing I'll note is that I think you will note in the warrants things that really speak to the expenditures, some of the expenditures by the Board of Education and Guilford Public Schools in response to COVID. So you will notice the purchase of tents. The expenditure here is 30%, the deposit required for the purchase of tents at 6 of our schools, 2 at the high school, and 1 at every other school except Cox Elementary, which has an outdoor overhang. These tents are so that teachers and students can take advantage of outdoor space as much as possible, and even do so in some inclement weather. You'll notice purchases of masks. You'll notice purchases of plexiglass dividers for tables and for rooms. You'll notice there are decals, floor decals. I will note that Amy Sullivan, who is the vice chair of the board, and I toured the schools last week, or now, I'm sorry, the week before, time flies. And saw the extra signage that is up at the schools. We saw the decals on the floor of the schools directing students in the direction that each hallway guides them. We saw in schools where we have tables rather than desks, and that is actually many of our schools at this point. This is a purposeful approach to more group style learning. So there are now plexiglass, kind of 3-sided plexiglass dividers on tables, so that students who, 2 students who may be at the same table, each have their own divider. So these are the expenses we're really starting to see related to COVID, and you will have no doubt noticed as you look through the warrants. I'm now going to turn it over to Mrs. Trudeau if she has anything to add, and then certainly we can answer your questions.
Okay.
I don't really think I have anything specific to add. I think Dr. Balestracci covered it really well. So whatever questions that you have, we'll try and answer.
I want to raise a question about the COVID sheet that you have here.
Okay.
And I'm seeing a number that's looks like $617,000.
So far, yes.
Where's it going?
It's going to cleaning supplies and PPE and tents and dividers.
Where's the number going to go?
Oh, where's it going? It's going up.
By what kind of a factor?
Well, can I ask a question first?
Sure.
To kind of go along with what Ken's saying. I mean, I don't think any of us really know where it's going to end up, but one of the things I noticed is that it does say August expenditures, and I know that you just, Linda, you started tracking this on August 1st, or is it going to be retroactive to the beginning of the budget cycle of July 1st?
So what's on this report is any purchases from July 1st through August, end of August.
So August expenditures really right now is August and July. It's 2 months worth.
Yes.
That being said, do you know what the differential was between what the July expenditures were to August? Did it double from July to August, or high level, just ratio wise?
August was higher, mainly because of the timing of the payments for a lot of stuff that was ordered early August, early
plexiglass
into
and
August.
masks and
So
all of that, right?
Oh, yeah, a lot of that. A lot of the dividers didn't come in until August, even though we ordered them June or July.
Right. So see if we can backtrack a little bit into Ken's question, which again, I think is incredibly difficult and challenging to even try to answer. That being said, there was a lot of upfront purchases in August that then the payments were made. As going into September and October and November and on and on and on, do you see that level of payment or that level of invoicing and that those fees and that going up or staying about the same in writing? Or do you think there'll be it's kind of crested to get ready for school and then there's gonna be a little bit of a reprieve? And then is there any cycle that you see that might happen? I don't think you can give a number, but I think you might be able to say, well, there was a lot of upfront costs in September. We may not get, too much, or there's still a lot of invoicing and billing that's got to happen. Just what are your thoughts on the cycling?
There's still some billing that we haven't processed yet. We haven't received all the items. There was just a large order placed for dividers for Adam's school today, as a matter of fact, to over $20,000 worth of dividers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to, I don't think it's going to keep going up drastically. I think most of the big purchases have been done. There's going to be a lot of purchases still of masks and Perel and wipes and cleaning supplies. But I don't think we're going to have the very big purchases like $300,000 for tents, $20,000 for dividers continuing.
Right. But in October, November, and as we move on, we're going to be seeing probably line items going into, or figures going to teachers, substitutes,
right,
lunchroom aides, nurses, custodial, all the things that were in the minutes that are going to be needed to supplement, for example, more monitors on the buses and monitors in the lunchroom and things like that. So salary and people will actually start to hit these line items.
Right. Those are going to start going up shortly. Working on trying to maintain a list and calculate those salaries out now, and start recording those into this report. And those are going to go up as we move through and we're actually find people to fill those positions that we have.
So
but that's correct, right? That is correct. You're going to see those, start to see those in a September report. We open school on September 10th. So you will start seeing bus monitors, custodial staff that is credited to COVID, higher than we would normally, the recess, the lunchroom aides, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. So Ken, just, I asked those questions because I had the same thing, not necessarily the same question as far as where we're going to end up, but what was the trending of it? And knowing that includes July and August, not just August, and doesn't include all the bills, and doesn't include a lot of things that are now that school's open, it's going to start to include. I mean, if you just do simple math and you say, well, this is 2 months worth, you could, I think it'd be unfair to do it this way, but you could take that number and multiply it times 6. But it's going to cycle. So you really can't do that. You can't really average out the numbers until you really get to like month number 6 or 7 and we're in schools, or maybe, who knows, in November, December, we may not be in schools.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's hard to tell, and Linda can probably speak to this better than I can. But we're going to buy tents once, right? We're not going to be buying tents again in November, December. We will be, we've paid for 30% of them, so that expense will remain. At some point we will have all the plexiglass dividers we need, but we will have staffing that will be monthly and will continue to be monthly, extra staffing above what we normally have. We will need to replenish masks and sanitizer. And so I agree. I think we at least need several months on the books before we have any kind of sense of what will be kind of a regular expense and what were one-time purchases that we've paid off et cetera.
Okay,
Question about tuition.
go ahead, Ken.
Okay.
I'm just concerned about the tuition and whether there's going to be any savings in there, whether there's the same face-to-face instruction off campus, so to speak. I don't see any numbers yet. Of course, it's too early to see any numbers with the buses, but the tuition, it's only been expended to 12.5%. Is there any drop-off in tuition, private or public, that you forecast for this year? Are more of the kids going to remain on campus with supportive?
Of the students that are outplaced, I don't really expect drastic number changes from where we ended last year. I haven't put together a projection on the tuition reports yet. We just went through and confirmed who's outplaced and where they are and started pulling together some of the numbers. So I'll have a better report for you on tuition projection next month. But right now I don't have it and I don't want to commit to a number until I get to go through it a little bit better.
Thank you, but I wanted the question out there.
Okay.
As far as the expense reports, I don't really have anything else besides that, although, like I said before, just prior to the meeting, very much appreciated the breakdown, and I know it's something that you need to do, Linda, but it's still, it's going to get real. It's going to get very real over the next couple months as far as how these expenses are going to climb. So,
yes, thank you.
Anything else regarding financial report or on warrants or on the minutes? I'm waiting to see if I have any marks on any of these. No.
Question earlier about Johnson Controls and with standing building, and I see that we have incurred over $30,000 in expenses. Is this outside of the issue that was raised with the standing building people? It says building management maintenance and service calls. This is all supportive to our basic contract?
Are you talking about the warrants, Ken?
Yeah, it's on page 5. Down one item. There are 2 items in there that total to
Got it.
$32,000.
Right, yeah, those are items that are outside of the energy performance contract.
Okay.
That's standard regular maintenance on buildings, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Katie, question for you. Just in general, more for the viewing public of this. Regarding meetings of the Board of Education, and is the Board of Education still meeting weekly, or how have your meetings and process been trending right now?
Right, so we did, as you know, meet most Mondays throughout the summer. Now that school has reopened, we, at least for now, are going back to our regular meeting schedule. So our regular Board of Ed meeting on the 2nd Monday of the month and our workshop meeting on the 4th Monday of the month. We are not, I realize we're only a couple weeks in, we're not holding special meetings on the alternate Mondays, but certainly can do that if need be. I think that the idea here now is it provided an important service both for the Board of Education, but for the community in terms of information, communication as we headed towards school reopening. At this point, questions that are coming into us from parents tend to be much more individual, right? And need to be addressed either by personal teachers or building administrators, et cetera. So at the moment, we have gone back to our regular meeting schedule. I will also add that we are aiming for a hybrid meeting for our workshop meeting next week. So hoping to have those board members that are able in person at Guilford High School with masks on, sitting 6 feet apart, while allowing for remote access, remote participation by those board members who cannot do that. We will need to retain having the public joining us via Zoom because of the 25-person cap for indoor activities. So that's certainly disappointing. We certainly love to have the public join us when they can. However, the volume of participants via Zoom over the summer, sometimes in the hundreds, really prevents us from doing that in terms of allowing for public in person. So we are making our first attempt at this hybrid meeting next Monday, and then plan to try to have our regular Board of Ed meeting, the second Monday of every month, be that hybrid model, and then workshop meetings moving forward will likely remain remote.
Okay. Anything else for Dr. Balestracci or Linda Trudeau regarding Board of Education? All right. I do not have anything else, so I will entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for the month of August 2020 in the amount of $3,411,397.06.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstentions, recusals? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Katie and Linda.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yay, rah, rah to everybody who's doing all this. Town side too. Just keep plugging through, right? Committee reports, building permits. Not much to report on that, I don't believe. Item number 7, old business. I only had one very small item, and we almost kind of segued into it a little bit with what Dr. Balestracci was saying regarding meetings and hybrid meetings and meeting in person. Since we did last meet, I know there was talk about trying to do meetings in person again. Since then, the governor extended the executive orders that were in place. With that said, I would entertain any thoughts or opinions on meeting in person again. Although I am inclined that, with the exception of a little bit of a bump this evening on participation from the public, that we continue to meet in this format at least until there's some sort of a pulling of the executive order. So I can go either way with this. I don't really, I mean, I think I've said this before, I think we would all love to see each other, whether it's social distanced or with masks, and be in a room and have conversations. But I also know that there's some sensitivity to that. So I just wanted to open up the discussion and see if anyone felt differently. But I right now would feel that we should just maintain what we are doing with Zoom meetings. Just eliminate some of the complications, I guess, of having both people in person and having the Zoom capabilities and having the public join in. It's a little bit, and I guess the town could do that with GCTV. I know it's a little bit of a different situation with the Board of Education because Katie, you'll be meeting in the media center at the high school. And so there's technology capabilities there. I can't really speak to what's going on or what we could do with the town or at the community center. So I don't know if the technology would be the same, but I just wanted to throw it out there. And actually, Mary Jane, maybe you can help a little bit on the Board of Selectmen meetings. Are they still meeting by Zoom? And they've not changed that, right?
Yes, and they had no discussion today about changing that at all. So I'm assuming they're continuing on in Zoom. We do have a Zoom room in Town Hall now where Matt sits during our Board of Selectmen meetings. So, you know, in the future, there's a possibility of using that.
Okay. Does anybody have any strong feelings one way or the other of migrating from Zoom, or are we all still good meeting in this platform, this format?
I'm fine continuing to meet in Zoom. I think makes the most sense for the time being.
I agree.
I agree. I have no
shaking
feelings
heads, so.
one way or another.
Okay. All right, so we will continue to meet in the way that we are doing in Zoom. So that was one item I had under old business. Any other old business? Anything under new business? Mary Jane? Yes. go ahead.
I was able to pull up an email, and I have the information regarding the Registrar of Voters grants if you'd like that information now.
Sure.
Every once in a while, I have a good memory, and that wouldn't be often, no. But we are in fact receiving $7,000 from the Secretary of State's office, broken down $3,000 for a computer grant. So they're providing some funding since we had to buy additional laptops to be used. They have a Safe Polls grant, which is based on the number of registered voters. We're receiving $2,500 from that, plus an additional $100 per polling place. Since we have 5, that's another $500. And also a Secure Polls grant, again, based on the number of registered voters, for $1,000. So a total of $7,000 coming to the town towards the election. Just wanted to report on that since I was asked.
That's helpful.
Thank you.
And you might like to know that Christ Church is being very kind to donate the use of the large room for election day for counting ballots. So we get that for free.
Excellent. Anything else under new business? Public forum? There's no one in public forum.
Let him in.
There's no one in the waiting room.
Kyle's iPhone.
It's just us. All right. Obviously, with nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
we will see.
Have a good evening. Stay safe.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Wear a mask.
Good night.
Take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody.